wonderful to be here in Edinburgh. Thank you, Sophie. Thank you, the Marketing Society. Thank you, Graham, for having me here today to give this talk. David Ogilvy was a Scot, self-professed anyway, and his first job was not in Scotland, but was in fact in Paris. He was a sous chef or a chef's assistant at the Hotel Majestic, where he learned how to run a brigade. And I'm going to talk today about another journey, a journey that starts in Paris, starts in Montmartre, and ends up in Madison Avenue. So without further ado, let's explore measuring the magic. The show, the artist, and the advertising poster. This is Toulouse-Lautrec's Moulin Rouge, featuring La Goulue, the high-kicking dancer in the centre there. In the foreground, No Bones Valentin is throwing some shapes. And in the background, we see silhouetted the bourgeoisie looking on enthusiastically. This poster was incredibly effective, provocative, but catapulted these performers and indeed the venue to stardom. When you look back at the history of mass reach advertising, it becomes clear that its origins and its effectiveness is rooted in art and the show. This is a poster by Jules Chéret. He was the pioneer, in fact the grandfather of advertising, you could call him. He was an expert lithographer, so printing in colour, early printing, mass production in colour. But he was also an artist and inspired by Rococo artists like Boucher and Fragonard 100 years before. This is his poster for the American actress Louis Fuller at the Folies Bergère doing her famous serpentine dance. You can see the Rococo in this picture. Toulouse-Lautrec's drawings in colour, expressing in provocative forms the demi-monde of Paris at the time. Alphonse Mucha, synonymous with Art Nouveau, inspired by Catholic Baroque architecture, the Sibyls in the Sistine Chapel. This is Sarah Bernhardt's show at the Renaissance Theatre. She commissioned him to create it. All the iconic Chat Noir, the first cabaret in Paris, and this famous poster, Théophile Steinlen. Or Leonetto Capiello, the Italian artist and caricaturist who was inspired by the Commedia dell'arte to create some of the most varied and ingenious posters in the late 19th century and early 20th. These artists and these performers were the, I guess, influencers of the day. And the advertising poster was its TikTok. These inspired, of course, before long, manufacturers to get in touch with these artists too. So before long, we see oil for oil lamps being advertised by Jules Chéret, confetti, cigarette papers, sterilized milk, chocolate. These ads had character, charm. They were full of emotion. And then came 10 to 15 years later, the self-professed scientists of advertising, around 1905, 1910. Albert Lasker in the centre here, flanked by his two creatives. On the left, John E. Kennedy, and on the right, Claude Hopkins. These self-professed scientists chose print advertising as their medium, and they looked at different split runs of print ads and coupon returns in those print ads to look at what drove direct response. And before long, 1923, Claude Hopkins' Scientific Advertising, he says, the time has come when advertising has in some hands reached the status of a science. Claude Hopkins didn't believe in capturing the general interest of a general audience, but speaking to those already half interested in the product, the category, to housewives who buy condensed milk, and giving them a reason why they should buy. Van Kamp's is pure milk, 28% solids, and so on. Many reasons in this example. He also, as you can probably gather, believed in the word and prioritized it over the image. He was rather serious and said, people don't patronize a clown. So much for showmanship. So, these are the origins, really, of these two schools of advertising, salesmanship and showmanship. Both have a long history, both are important, each supports the other, but of the two, the more important, for profit and growth, is showmanship. And over the last 15 to 20 years, we've really started to understand why. Back in 2008, 2009, I conducted some research with Peter Field, looking at the relationship between research measures in advertising and business outcomes collected by the IPA and the IPA's effectiveness data. And what we found here would have delighted Claude Hopkins, because we found that reason why advertising that was effective in communicating a message to people, was particularly good at driving direct response. This, of course, is because people are in the buying window, and when they see a message that is relevant to them, they will go out and buy. But what he wouldn't have been so happy about was this finding, that key message takeout, reason why advertising, is not very good at driving growth rate over a longer period. Share of market gain, a point of extra share of voice in this example. So what did do this? Well, it was emotional response that showed how effective you might be in growth rate terms. Emotion does three things. It helps to capture attention, it helps to lodge your brand in memory, but it also, of course, helps to create preference, to make you feel as if you want to buy this product more than think about it. It's an intuitive, kind of instinctive response. Very important for driving profit and reducing price sensitivity. A few years later, Les Binet, Peter Field, talked about these two schools in the long and the short of it. And they showed how fame advertising, what I describe as showmanship, was much more likely to drive growth rate than rational advertising, salesmanship. So we start to see this kind of pattern emerging, a pattern that was actually established over 100 years ago. What would David Ogilvy have made of these two schools of advertising? Well, he, of course, understood them both. He said famously, "We sell or else." His brother-in-law was Rosser Reeves, who invented the unique selling proposition, the USP. He was a salesmanship aficionado, and he believed in fixing the USP for many years and repeating it. In fact, David Ogilvy himself said that the Dove campaign, Quarter Moisturizer, could have been a campaign by Rosser Reeves and the Bates agency. But he also said, we've got some other clubs in our bag. Because David Ogilvy understood brand, understood the importance of brand and brand image and consistency over time. His other great influence was Raymond Rubicam, who was, of course, from the showmanship school of advertising. In my work, I look to a neuropsychologist, Ian McGilchrist, to try to explain and understand these two schools of advertising. He talks about two hemispheres of the brain. Not that they do different things, but they do things differently. They have different modes of attention, he describes it. The right hemisphere brings a kind of broad, open, and alert attention to bear on the world around us. And it tells us, if something's happening just at the edge of our awareness, just slightly off stage, if you like. And anything of interest, it passes to the left hemisphere to bring a sort of close-up, narrow beam attention to bear, very focused and goal-orientated. The right hemisphere prioritizes different things. So the right hemisphere is interested in the living. It's interested in the social context, the way we're all sort of seated here. It understands the situation. It understands the other person's point of view. It's what helps to give us empathy. It understands people's gestures, their movement, their expression, their accents, their intonation, the way that they speak. It picks up on the implicit, very important. And it understands things on two levels. So it helps us to understand metaphor. It helps us to understand humour. It's the right hemisphere that tells the difference between a joke and a lie. And it's the right hemisphere that helps us to understand narrative, things unfolding in lived time, and also helps us to understand music, to appreciate music. The left hemisphere is very bad at these things. The left hemisphere sees people as a jumble of body parts, literally. And so the left hemisphere can't understand people. It really can't understand the implicit. Everything has to be direct. Everything has to be this or that, one thing or another. Can't bear ambiguity, can't bear risk. And it likes to categorize things. It likes to fix things so they're unchanging. It likes to control the world. It likes to manipulate it. And it uses tools with which to do this. Language is one of these tools. So the word is particularly important for the left hemisphere. Signs, symbols, these are things of the left hemisphere. And it also understands very little of music, only very basic rhythm. So when you think about these two types of attention, I think these explain the two schools of advertising. The practitioners and their perspective on advertising, but also they help to explain why we have these two schools of advertising and what we need to do if we're going to be effective at them. Because showmanship advertising is there to capture the broad beam attention of the right hemisphere.
It's an outrage. It's disgusting. Magnifique.
Captures attention, creates an emotional response, lodges it in memory, makes you want to do something with this thing because it creates preference and salience. The left hemisphere responds better to salesmanship advertising, close up. We're closer up to the purchase in this mode. We are half interested already. We've been warmed up to it. So we try to give people what they need to know right now. Let's have a look at two modern examples, bring us into the 21st century. Here's the first for showmanship.
Supplies. I said send supplies.
Say again?
Claude Hopkins would not have approved of this ad. But you notice how it starts broad. It's something that anyone could be interested in, and then it brings you in, reels you in. Let's have a look now at a modern salesmanship example.
Introducing Budweiser Zero. Introducing Budweiser Zero. 0% alcohol, 0 grams of sugar. Full Budweiser flavor. A refreshing alcohol-free brew that tastes like the real thing. Budweiser Zero.
Notice how close we were to everything here. the words on the screen, giving us a reason why we should buy. So what we don't have here is narrative. We don't have a sense of place, we don't have a metaphor, we don't have anything like that. What I'd like to do now is to play you a quick clip of me talking to Ian McGilchrist about the importance of narrative for the right hemisphere. This is from my course 8.
If you give a narrative to the left hemisphere, it understands perfectly a manual on how to operate your latest gadget. But a narrative is better appreciated by the right hemisphere.
Yes.
A myth, the left hemisphere sees a bunch of lies.
Yes.
This is not true. Whereas the right hemisphere sees that it has a deeper kind of truth that can only be expressed indirectly and implicitly. Anciently, the Greeks thought that what they call mythos, from which we get the word myth, muthos, was more important and a greater path to truth than mere logos, from which we get the word logic.
Yes.
It meant word, but it also meant something more than that. It meant the sort of origin of things. So things like narratives, metaphors, irony, sense of humour, sarcasm, facial expressions, the reading of the body.
Reading of context as well,
the context
and the body, yes.
is the right hemisphere's domain. And when it's absent, you get a world which is bam, 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 made up of a lot of stimuli that you don't know quite how they relate.
Unrelated to each other, probably unrelated to place or to people.
Exactly.
Yes, devitalised, you could say.
Devitalised,
yes.
deanimated.
Yes, that's right.
And it's devitalised advertising that we have moved towards in the last 15 or 20 years. We've moved away from showmanship with its narrative, with its sense of place, its human connection, its metaphor, its humour, towards advertising that looks more like this: salesmanship, up close, words on the screen, telling us what to think and do, no sense of narrative, time, live, place. People, if they're there at all, look like props staring at us blankly. This is the problem we have today. We're stuck in a salesmanship rut. So what, you might say? Surely it's just a different aesthetic style, isn't it? Well, actually, it has a real bearing on the ability of your advertising to capture attention, create an emotional response, and lodge in memory. Create preference for your brand. At System 1, we measure emotional response using a scale we developed on Paul Ekman's work, psychologist, 7 basic emotions plus neutrality. And we show people an ad and we ask them which face best expresses how they feel. And over the years, looking at effectiveness data and looking at this emotional response scale, we've created a star rating from 1 through to 5 that helps marketeers to know how much bang for their buck they're going to get creatively. How much growth are you going to get from this emotional campaign? This is a recent piece of work we did with Walk, looking at 162 campaigns, profit ROI, against emotional response, against this star rating. You can see the relationship here, and you can see what happens when you get to the really high end of emotional response, this showmanship at the top end here, 4 and 5 stars. Unfortunately, when you look at the kind of advertising that's been made today, this is over 100,000 ads, only 6% gets into that top category. That's TV advertising, highly emotive advertising. Imagine what it's like elsewhere. We're creating campaigns that pass like ships in the night. We're churning out dull. And we need a new creative revolution, much like the last one in the 1960s, led by 3 individuals who were actually outsiders to Madison Avenue: David Ogilvy, William Birnbach, Bill, and Leo Burnett. And so what I'd like to do now, following in the spirit of David Ogilvy and his 5 questions, is to give you 5 principles for showmanship, drawn from these great thinkers, but also from my own research. And the first of these is you've got to find the magic in your product. It's not just what you say, it's how you say it. Let's look at 2 automotive campaigns from the 1960s. At the time in America, advertisers were talking about how big their cars were, impossibly long, incredible scale. What did Birnbach do? Well, he said think small. Showed it too. Whereas advertisers at the time were saying, I'm new. And their cars soon went out of fashion or went obsolete. Bernbach said, we never go out of style. And when others said, I'm beautiful, Bernbach said, ugly's only skin deep. And the ugliness doesn't add a thing to the cost of the car, he says. He respected the audience. At the other end of the automotive scale, David Ogilvy. David Ogilvy said, tell the truth, but make the truth fascinating. At 60 miles an hour, the loudest noise in this new Rolls-Royce comes from the electric clock, he wrote. This is how you find the magic in your product. This is how you stand out from the competition. So that's the first, find the magic in your product. The second thing I want to tell you about is the idea that attracts attention must also tell the story. Bernbach said, you're not right to show a man standing on his head just to attract attention. But you are right to stand a man on his head to attract attention if you're advertising a product to stop things falling out of his pockets. I think we've forgotten this lesson. Here's a modern ad which I think does this very well. Let's have a look.
I can't believe I survived. Upside down, I'm alive.
The lizard isn't gratuitous. It's there to help tell the story. The other thing that ad does, which I'm going to tell you about in the next principle, is there's a moment of change, a pivotal moment of change, a psychological transformation. This is my third principle. It's an artistic principle from the 17th century. But I'm going to demonstrate it by showing you this ad. So have a look at this.
Hi, Gwen, right? Benji, I live just...
Benji, of course, from...
Yes. Hi. Bit of a weird one, but you haven't been getting any of my parcels, have you?
I love, can't say I have.
It's just I've ordered quite a few things online recently, and with our addresses being so difficult to find, I can see why it might get...
I'll let you know if anything arrives.
Emotions betrayed on the human face at a moment of revelation. This is an artistic principle known as moto-azione, exactly how artists in 17th century Italy would have described this. Moto from movere, meaning to move, the stirring of the passions betrayed visibly to the outside world. And bodily actions, azione, poses or expressions marking crucial moments of the story. These artists knew that if you were going to create movement, if you're trying to move your audience, you've got to show movement. And they knew that if you're going to create affect, you've got to show affect. And that if you're going to capture attention, then you've got to show intention. Have a look at these three paintings. This boy bitten by a lizard. A kind of moment of transformation, a emotion writ on his face. Or David's Bernini, casting his sling at Goliath. Or here, an angel preventing a father from killing his son. Stop! These are like stills from a film, a moment of maximum emotional intensity, the pivotal moment, creating a psychological change through emotion. David Ogilvy would have recognized these images as having story appeal, as he put it, suggesting something to the audience, suggesting a narrative, suggesting there's something deeper going on, a way to connect with your audience. And it's certainly something that I've found to be true in my work. When we look at the relationship between certain features of advertising and their ability to capture attention and drive an emotional response, it's these showmanship features, this right brain sort of way of thinking with characters, with movement, with narrative, perhaps with music, animated people doing something unusual, unexpected. It's this that captures attention, drives emotional response, and also, as we'll come on to see, drives broad and lasting effects. This sort of left-brain salesmanship, it's inherently uninteresting to people unless they're in the buying window, unless they've been warmed up to the brand in some way, probably by your showmanship, as you can see here, bottom left. One of the things you'll notice top right there is character, and characters with vitality and agency. And that brings me to the fourth principle, what I describe as the fluent device. The fluent device is a term I use to describe a character that's repeatedly used, or perhaps a scenario that's repeatedly used as well, that becomes familiar but changes a bit each time. David Ogilvy, of course, had the man in the Hathaway shirt. He also had the man from Schweppes. Repeatedly used. This is an image with story appeal. What's going on here? Why has he got an eye patch? What's happening to him? A character, repeatedly used, very effective, lasted many years. Have a look at this.
On car insurance for over 70 years. And who doesn't want value for the dollar? Been true since the day I made my first dollar. Where is that dollar? I got it out to show you.
Was it rather old and wrinkly?
Yeah, you saw it?
Fancy a crisp?
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
The Geico Gecko. Leo Burnett would have been very familiar, of course, with characters like this. He believed in friendly familiarity, the glacier-like power of friendly familiarity, he described it. And characters are a great way to do this. They also help to reduce price sensitivity to some extent too. They get you noticed, they get you understood, but they get people to feel something very quickly. Fifth one is when you're baiting the trap with cheese, always leave room for the mouse. So with showmanship advertising, you've got to give something to your audience for them to do, for them to join the dots, to work out what's going on. Let's have a look at this example. This is, by the way, another fluent device of the second kind, the scenario fluent device.
Good morning, Yorkshire Tea. Oh, he was meeting the farmers in Kenya. Let me just check if he's back. Just popping you on hold. Thanks for holding. Putting you through.
Yorkshire Tea, where everything's done proper.
Good morning, Yorkshire Tea.
Brilliant. So celebrities from Yorkshire to show the lengths to which this company goes to bring you the perfect cup of the proper brew. Another great fluent device, but also helps to show how you yourselves are working out what's going on here. You're respecting the audience. As Ogilvy might have put it, the consumer is not a moron, she is your wife. This sort of ability to give people something for them to consume and for them to work out what's going on. So 5 principles that you can take away and use in your marketing here. Find the magic in your product. The idea that attracts attention must also tell the story. Moto azione, the fluent device, and leaving room for the mouse. In fact, I think that the Yorkshire Tea campaign does all 5 of these things. Let's have a look at how it's performed. You can see here how it's grown spontaneous awareness in the period since the campaign launched at the expense of others in the category, and how it's grown in market share terms relative to others in the category, almost doubling its market share in this period. This is what you as marketeers can achieve. This is what your shareholders will thank you for. This is the power of a big idea. So while salesmanship can drive direct response, speaking to the people in the market right now, it's showmanship that drives trust, preference, fame, salience, that drives broad and lasting effects. Profit gain, share gain, sales gain. Very important to embrace showmanship. And for those of you thinking, well, how do we do this in a modern media landscape? Everything's changed, hasn't it? Well, actually, we see these two schools of advertising working in exactly the same way on one of the more modern platforms, TikTok. So this is work we've done at System 1 with TikTok, showing how salesmanship advertising, defined by its features, drives conversion, but doesn't do anything else to secure the business fundamentals. It's a one-trick pony. It does conversion, it does sales. Yes, very good. We need it. We absolutely need it. But it's showmanship that does that and all these other really important things too. And we found the same pattern holds not just for advertising on TikTok, but also for creator content too. These two schools exist there. So when it comes to TikTok, what we're really saying is that it's just the original updated. Practices change, but principles remain. So, to conclude, I'd like to say you've got to put on a show if you're going to grow. And your show needs to be more interesting, more arresting, more entertaining than the content that surrounds you. David Ogilvy put it, you can't bore a consumer into buying your product, you can only interest them in buying it. And that's the thing about art, narrative, humour, music, metaphor. They open people up to possibility. So go on with the show. And remember, there's no business like show business.